The waters of Lake Dam were darker than any human could imagine, the kind of darkness that clung to everything, wrapping it in cold silence. The lake had always been a place of mystery, a place where the veil between the known and the unknown thinned. The locals would whisper stories of things beneath the surface, creatures older than the world itself, forgotten beings from ancient times, and shadows that crept through the depths. The Hellfish was one of those shadows, a creature of immense size and terrible beauty, with glistening silver scales and eyes that glowed in the dark like burning embers. But Elvis, the Elvish Hellfish, was different. Born from an unlikely union between an elf and a hellfish, Elvis was something the world had never seen before. He was unique, a blend of two worlds that should never have crossed paths. Elvis had lived his life beneath the surface of the lake, alone and misunderstood. The other hellfish, while fierce and territorial, would never accept him. His elven blood was an aberration to them, a curse. To the elves, he was an abomination, a mistake of nature, and the humans who lived along the shore knew of him only as a half-legend, a creature to be feared. But fear was something Elvis had grown accustomed to. It was a constant companion, like the dark waters around him. Every ripple in the lake, every movement in the shadows, made him pause and watch, ever vigilant. He had learned the hard way that the world above the water was just as dangerous as the creatures that prowled beneath it. There were always humans on the shores of Lake Dam, fishermen, traders, travelers, all hoping to catch something extraordinary, something that could bring them wealth or fame. They had heard the rumors of a creature unlike any other, a creature with the power of the elves and the instincts of the hellfish. But no one truly understood what it meant to be Elvis. No one could know the pain of being caught between two worlds, rejected by both. Elvis's first encounter with humans had been long ago, when he was still a young hellfish. He had ventured too close to the shore, curious about the sounds of laughter and voices drifting on the wind. What he had seen had been nothing like the peaceful life he imagined. The humans had seen him, too, a flash of silver in the water, and they had screamed in terror. Before he knew it, they had thrown spears and cast nets into the water, trying to capture him, to destroy him. He had escaped, but the memory of that moment never left him. The terror, the hatred in their eyes, it burned deeper than any wound. From then on, Elvis had learned to stay in the deeper parts of the lake, where the shadows were thick, and the humans rarely ventured. He had fed on the fish that swam in the coldest depths, avoiding the hooks and traps the humans set in the shallows. The lake had been his refuge, his sanctuary. But even the sanctuary of the lake had its limits. One season, the lake's waters began to recede. The rains that fed it were few, and the fish that had once thrived in its depths grew scarce. Elvis found himself swimming further and further from the safety of the deeper waters, driven by hunger. The shallows had always been dangerous, but the desperation in his gut pushed him to ignore the warnings of instinct. The shallows were a different world, a place where the land and water met in a delicate balance. Here, the waters were warmer, the air thick with the scent of pine and coconut. The humans who lived on the shores of Lake Dam would toss the remnants of their meals into the water, and Elvis had learned to scavenge these scraps. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep him alive. That day, it was the scent of decayed coconut that drew him in, a scent that promised sustenance. He had been cautious at first, circling the water near the shore, his sharp eyes scanning the land. There were no signs of humans nearby. The scent of coconut grew stronger as he ventured closer, until the shape of a half-decayed fruit came into view. Elvis moved toward it, his hunger overwhelming his wariness. As he tore into the soft flesh of the coconut, a sudden unease prickled at the back of his mind. The water felt too still, too silent. The calm before the storm. Suddenly, there was a sharp wham, and Elvis was knocked to the bottom of the lake with a force that stunned him. His body slammed into the cold mud beneath him, and before he could react, he felt the sharp pressure of something pinning him down. A flash of light caught his eye, a glint of metal under the water. An arrow? His instincts kicked in, but before he could escape, rough, calloused hands grasped at him from the surface of the water. They dragged him upward, and he fought against them, trying to twist free, but the strength of the hands was too much. The sharp pain of the arrow lodged in his side made him gasp, but it was the sight above him that froze him in place. A man stood on the shore, pulling him from the water with the ease of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. His hands were long and elegant, his features sharp, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. An elf. The last thing Elvis expected to see. It was then, in that moment of agonizing pain and confusion, that Elvis realized who this elf was. His father. The one who had abandoned him so long ago, the one whose blood ran through his veins, the one who had never returned to the lake, never come to see what his son had become. A twisted smile crossed the elf's face as he examined his catch. "Beautiful," he murmured, running his fingers over Elvis's slick skin. The words felt like a death sentence. Elvis's heart raced, and for the first time in his life, he felt an overwhelming sense of relief. He was finally going to meet his father. After all these years, the one person he had longed to know, to understand, was here. But the joy was short-lived. As the elf gazed down at him, Elvis felt a coldness seep into his bones, a horrible realization taking root in his mind. The elf's eyes were not filled with love or recognition, there was only hunger. His father's twisted voice echoed in his fading consciousness, and the last thing Elvis heard before his vision went dark was, "Son, you're going to be delicious."